Hundreds of everyday household items are about to get a lot more expensive thanks to President Trump's trade war and specifically the steel and aluminum tariffs. The tariffs were initially only expected to hit raw materials, but now they include goods containing steel and aluminum.
You know Canada stood their ground in this tariff showdown faster than a blackjack dealer flips a card, and now things are burning. Canada refused to cave from the very first blow, rejecting what it labeled a bad deal, even as Donald Trump demanded an eye-watering 50% steel and aluminum tariff. That stubborn refusal from Ottawa was more than simple politics. It was a clear act of national defiance. For Canada, giving in would have meant tens of thousands of workers left stranded, communities gutted, and industries exposed to economic blackmail. From the start, officials made it plain that no agreement was better than one that compromised their sovereignty. So this confrontation is unfolding in real time, and its timeline matters. The sparks were lit back in early February 2025 when Trump launched a wave of tariffs targeting Canadian goods under his revived protectionist strategy. The rhetoric grew sharper through March, and then, at a rally in Pittsburgh on May 30th, Trump dropped the hammer, declaring that tariffs on steel and aluminum imports would double from 25% to 50%.
Amazing. You wouldn't have this plant right now if I didn't put on 25 and 50% tariffs. They were dumping steel, as you know, from China and from all over the world. They were dumping it all over our country, dumping it. And it was bad steel, it was garbage.
He framed it as a national security necessity, promising American steelworkers that their jobs would be ring-fenced against foreign competition. Within days, on June 4th, the executive order was signed, making the measure law. For Canadian exporters, the implications were brutal. A market that had been deeply integrated for decades was suddenly choked by political decree. Prime Minister Mark Carney, newly in office after replacing Justin Trudeau in March, had no choice but to fight back. Carney's government announced on July 16th a sweeping plan to defend the domestic steel industry. Canada would impose a 50% tariff on steel imports exceeding 2024 volumes from free trade partners, with the exception of the United States, and slap a 25% tariff on Chinese melted steel. More than that, Ottawa unveiled a $1 billion investment fund for steel innovation and modernization, signaling that this was not just about surviving a trade war, but about reshaping Canada's industrial future. It was a message to Washington: Canada will not be bullied into submission. This was not Canada's first act of retaliation. Earlier, in response to Trump's February tariffs, Ottawa had already imposed duties on $30 billion worth of American goods, ranging from agricultural products to industrial supplies. Some measures were suspended by mid-May to leave room for negotiation, but 70% remained intact, showing that Canada was prepared to keep up the pressure. Trump's decision to escalate to 50% tariffs destroyed any fragile goodwill. When the G7 summit came in June, both leaders agreed in principle to work toward a resolution within 30 days. Yet that deadline passed with no breakthrough. Talks stalled, and instead of easing, Canada doubled down with its July protections and prepared even tougher counter tariffs by July 21st. The impacts of this standoff are already hitting hard. Industry groups warn that more than 23,000 Canadian steel jobs and 9,500 aluminum jobs are at risk. In the US, costs for car makers, builders, and retailers are climbing fast. Steel and aluminum are the backbone of everything from automobiles to appliances, and tariffs this steep ripple through every supply chain. Inflation-weary consumers are likely to feel the pinch in higher prices at dealerships, hardware stores, and even supermarkets. What was once a tightly woven North American production system is unraveling under political strain.
The Commerce Department says 407 items are being added to the list of derivative steel and aluminum products and will be subject to higher levies.
Canada's July countermeasures were about more than retaliation. By setting strict limits on steel imports and penalizing Chinese melted metal, Ottawa was also shielding itself from global trade diversion. With American markets closing, foreign producers would naturally look to dump excess supply elsewhere. Canada refused to let its domestic sector become collateral damage. The billion-dollar Steel Innovation Fund was designed not just as a shield, but as a long-term strategy to upgrade facilities, invest in cleaner technologies, and ensure that Canada could stand tall even if trade disputes dragged on for years. Mark Carney's role in all this is worth noting. Known for his time as a central banker in Canada and the UK, Carney brought a technocratic but firm approach to politics. Within months of taking office, he faced one of the most aggressive trade disputes in Canadian history. His decision to refuse concessions and escalate defenses has won him support across party lines. Even opposition leaders who often attack the government agreed that bending to Trump's demands would have been catastrophic. In their words, no deal is better than a bad deal, and Canadians largely appear to agree. On the US side, Trump's gamble is risky. By portraying himself as the defender of American steelworkers, he hopes to secure political capital, especially in swing states reliant on heavy industry. But economists warn that the broader consequences could undermine the very workers he claims to protect. Rising input costs may force manufacturers to cut jobs or relocate production. Retailers, already hit by years of inflation and supply chain disruptions, could see margins shrink further. Political theater aside, the long-term effects may be painful for ordinary Americans. By August 21, no resolution was in sight. Carney and Trump held a phone call described by Ottawa as productive and wide-ranging. The two leaders discussed trade, the war in Ukraine, the crisis in Gaza, and broader economic security frameworks. Yet, the steel tariffs remained untouched, and neither side budged on core demands. The trade war now looms as an open-ended battle of endurance, with both governments hoping the other will blink first. Looking ahead, analysts believe the standoff could drag well into next year unless a face-saving compromise is found. Canada's strategy suggests it is preparing for a prolonged fight, building resilience at home and seeking to diversify markets abroad. The U.S. continues to rely on its market size and leverage, but allies are increasingly uneasy with Washington's hardline approach. If neither side yields, North America could face years of disrupted trade, higher costs, and political fallout. So the story comes full circle. Trump demanded 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Canada flatly refused, and the clash has left U.S. retail on the brink overnight. While shaking the foundation of a trade partnership once considered unbreakable, jobs, industries, and entire communities are hanging in the balance. The furnace of this fight is burning hot, and the outcome is still uncertain. And that leaves us with the question, was Canada right to dig in its heels and reject what it saw as a bad deal, or should it have compromised to protect immediate stability? Was Trump's tariff strategy a bold defense of American industry, or a reckless gamble that risks gutting the very economy he seeks to shield? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more deep dives, and stay tuned, because this steel war is far from over, and the next twist could come faster than a hammer striking the forge.